Welcome to Southern Maryland Perspectives. My name is Brad Gottfried, and I'm the President Emeritus of the College of Southern Maryland. This is a talk show that features timely topics and guests from around the region. This morning, we have a very special show. I'm with Gordon Lohr, all the way from California, where he is actually, I won't say you're fighting fires in California, but certainly they're coming close. But the reason that Gordon is on the line and why we're going to be interviewing him today is he grew up in Calvert County, had a great childhood here before he moved to the West Coast, and he's written a book called Connections. And we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about his experiences, and I'm excited to have him as a guest on the show. So, Gordon, good morning. How are you?
Thank you, Brad. The fires have bypassed us, so I'm safe.
Oh, good. Very, very scary, though.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, Gordon, we're going to talk about your life, but let's just jump right in. Now, you were born and raised in Calvert County?
Yes, in Solomon's Island, where the Chesapeake Bay meets the Patuxent River.
And not to be forward, but about what year were you actually born?
1936, on the Ides of March.
Wow. And how long did you actually live in Calvert County before you moved on?
Well, I moved out here from Washington, D.C., where I started my editing writing career at a place called the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, studying the UFO phenomena. And then I moved out here in 1974.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I'm sure the environment has certainly changed in California since you moved there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yes, it has.
So let's talk about, so you grew up in Calvert County. What was it like? Now, first of all, your family had an establishment on the Solomons. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, my grandfather established a seafood harvesting and packing business, particularly oysters, through the J.C. Lohr and Sons Oyster House, which is now there, beautifully refurbished by the Calvert Marine Museum there at Solomon's Island. And then my father and Uncle Joe took it over when he died in 1945, and it continued to 1985. But meanwhile, my father had transferred his oyster business to St. Mary's County in 1961.
Oh,
and,
okay.
It was at my father's marina, G.I. Rupert Lohr and Sons Marina there at Solomon's Island, where I met a number of these celebrities who like to sail the Chesapeake Bay, like Robert Mitchum and James Cagney and Rita Hayworth and Burl Ives, people like that I met there.
Wow. Now, so how did you interact with them? So did you work in your grandfather's establishment?
Yes, I did before I went into the Army in 1960, but it was during the decade of the 1950s that I met most of these people, and then after I got out to California at the place called Beverly Hot Springs, where I was the general manager, I met many more people like Tom Hanks and Jodie Foster,
wow,
Oliver Stone, and so on and so forth. But it was there at Solomon's Island at Dad's Marina where I met these people, particularly Burl Ives. I spent a full day with him, and he was then noted as Carl Sandburg, the great author and historian, said he was the greatest balladeer of any century.
Yeah. Well, when I think about these individuals, especially Robert Mitchum, I usually think about Hollywood. I usually think about California. I'm a little surprised that they were spending time around the Chesapeake.
A lot of them did. Burl Ives had his boat. He kept it there in Annapolis.
Wow.
And when I met him in 1957, he was on his way to Florida to make the film Wind Across the Everglades. And he also told me he had just gotten signed a contract for a then untitled film, which became The Big Country with Gregory Peck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was won his Academy Award as Best Supporting Actor for that performance. And he told me about his journey down there. Was spending 8 hours with him. He and I even sang a folk song together. I was studying folk singing at the piano and guitar and singing at the Peabody Conservatory of Music in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I played the folk song "Jack was Every Inch a Sailor," a Newfoundland folk song. And there were many. There were a number of celebrities there. Robert Mitchum, Rita Hayworth came in. James Cagney came in. Cagney loved the Chesapeake Bay. He had a farm on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts.
So would he sail?
Had an old Chesapeake Bay bug-eye schooner that he used, and he came in on that.
Okay.
To my father's marina, and I spent a couple of hours with him, I guess.
Wow. Now, oftentimes they'll say that these big stars, especially way back when, were kind of nice people. I mean, did you find that to be the case?
Absolutely, yeah. I can't remember a bad experience. And it was very interesting. I also had experiences not only there, but here in California and even in Europe. I met the King of Sweden purely by chance in Stockholm, and also the Duke of Windsor, who was the Edward VIII, King Edward VIII. He abdicated his throne.
Yes.
I met him on board the SS United States coming back from Cobh, Ireland, and we had a lifeboat drill in the middle of the ocean because we had a bad storm and had to wait until we got away from the harbor to have the lifeboat drill. So after I tied my life jacket on, I sat down to relax and felt a tap on my shoulder and a voice that said, "Young man, could you please help me with my life jacket?"
Oh.
I got up, and it wasn't until I tied the life jacket around him that I saw it was the Duke of Windsor.
Wow.
And so we talked a little bit about the Chesapeake Bay. He said that he was familiar with it, and he loved the seafood there.
Yes.
And
wow.
And we discussed matters. He even invited me down to the first class lounge to have a drink. But before we got there, a crew member came up and said that the Duchess, who had been suffering from the flu due to the storm that we had, and so I didn't get that drink. But I did meet the former King Edward VIII.
Wow.
The only man to ever abdicate the throne in the 1,000-year history of the British monarchy.
And he did it for love, I understand.
That's right, he sure did.
Wow. Now, you've written this book. It's available on Amazon. It's called Connections, and it's very easy to find on Amazon. Simply Google, or not, you can simply put in Connections.
It's through Amazon and also through the publishing company, Bear Manor Media. And I even have a few copies here I can sell if people wanted to contact me.
Now, what prompted you to write the book?
Well, actually, about a couple of years ago, I had two friends. One was Neil Earl. I had just written a book where he figured prominently in it called the Earl family of Newfoundland and Labrador. That was about the history of the founding family of the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and also Al Doshna. Al was a writer, editor, producer, director, so on in Hollywood, and we became good friends. And so I had encouragement from them because they knew some of my story about all the celebrities I've made, and they thought it would make a remembrance book.
I see.
So through their accomplishments and the good graces of all these celebrities, I had a real enlightening, learned, spiritual, and even a very interesting journey through the world of celebrity. The subtitle of the book is called A Lifetime Journey Through the World of Celebrity.
Mm. Now, you met lots and lots of celebrities. Do you have a favorite?
Yes, Burl Ives. Hands down, it was. He was sailing in his marina through the inland waterway along the Atlantic coast by himself. He only had a small boat, and I was just starting out myself as a folk singer when he came into my father's marina. And he even autographed my copy of his Down to the Sea and Ships record album.
Wow.
And he was on his way there to film Wind Across the Everglades. I discussed his role opposite James Dean in East of Eden and a lot else during our 2 days together. As I say, he said that he had just signed a contract to star with Gregory Peck in what became The Big Country in 1958, and he won a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his role. And early the next morning, actually, while I was still asleep, he told my parent that I had become his favorite fan. I still think of that day.
Wow.
As a matter of fact.
Oh, that's great. You know, when I think about Burl Ives, I think of two things. One, I think of his singing, obviously, and two, he was a great villain on the screen.
Well, not a villain. He rarely played the villain part. The only one that I would consider is the one he went down to Florida to make when I met him, Wind Across the Everglades.
Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
He played the part of Cottonmouth. And his favorite pet was a poisonous cottonmouth snake that he would let loose on Christopher Plummer, who had his first role ever in films as a member of the Audubon Society, who was trying to put a stop to Cottonmouth and his band of ruffians who would shoot these beautiful birds just so women could wear their feathers in their hats and stuff.
Wow. Now, where did Burl Ives live that he came to the Solomons?
You know, he actually had his boat. He did. He says when he finishes a film in Hollywood or elsewhere. I think he may have been living in Anacortes, Washington at the time, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So that was 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
James Cagney told me the same thing, that as soon as he got through in Hollywood, he would catch the nearest train to Martha's Vineyard, spend time there, and then possibly sail the Chesapeake, which he loved to do as well. But so these people, Robert Mitchum, of course, had a farm over in Trapp, Maryland.
Oh.
And also James A. Michener, whom I met earlier in high school, and at a small confab with some students there in Baltimore. And he had a beautiful home there that he had while he was researching his novel Chesapeake, which came out in 1975.
Wow.
And I talked with him about that when I was a student at McDonough School in Baltimore.
Now, Gordon, you, by the way, let me just mention to the listeners, I'm with Gordon Lohr. What a colorful individual. Was born, raised, lived in the Solomons, St. Mary's County, etc. Then eventually moved west, became, and we're going to talk a little bit about as general manager of the Beverly Hot Springs in Los Angeles. But you started off training to go into a music career. How did you veer from music to becoming a general manager at the Hot Springs?
Well, actually, my main thing was I love music, and what I wanted to do, I love classical and folk music so much that I just wanted to spend a full year at the conservatory.
Okay.
And just intermix with these people and be there, enjoy the music, learn something about it. I didn't intend really to graduate as a musician. I don't think I was that good. But I started, my main thing was to become a writer, and I finally went to Louisiana State University and majored in journalism and got my degree there and started writing. My first really professional job was at the UFO organization, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, and I published my first book there through Prentice Hall Incorporated called Mysteries of the Skies, UFOs in Perspective. And then I went on there to publish 6 more books. But most of my career was spent as the editor and associate editor and publisher of various journals, newspapers, magazines, newsletters, that sort of type of thing, in a number of fields. I was also the White House press correspondent there in the 1970s, where I was in the Oval Office twice with Richard Nixon when he was signing bills through the U.S. Environmental Agency to protect the skies and the waters in North America.
I see.
Actually, Sarah McClendon, who spent 50 years there at the White House and was known as the Dean of White House Press Correspondence, was my main sponsor to the National Press Club, and Dan Rather was my secondary sponsor.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, indeed. So I had a good fortune to meet a lot of these people. I even met then Vice President Lyndon Johnson at the 50th anniversary of the Capitol Radio Engineering Institute, where I worked, and the Vice President had some connections there. So he was among the first. The first real celebrity I met, though, was Harry Truman. And I'll tell you an interesting little story there. When my father first established the marina, it opened up in 1950, I believe. And Truman came in 1951 and in a Coast Guard boat. And actually, just several months before that, there had been an attempt on his life through 3 Puerto Ricans who thought he was against Puerto Rican autonomy at the time. And so my father asked if the president was aboard, and surprisingly enough, the deckhand said yes, he was. And my father then asked if we could shake his hand and meet him. And he said, well, I don't know. Of course, this was back in the days before, there was such tight security as it is today.
Right.
And so he said he would ask the president, and so he came back a few minutes later, and he says, yes, the president will shake your hand. And my father asked, where is he? He says, follow me. So he led us over to, believe it or not, an open porthole, and the President Truman stuck out his hand, shook my hand, and said, hello, young fellow. I hope you vote Democrat when you get old enough, because it's boys like you that will help, that when they grow up will help keep this country sound and safe. So I shook Harry Truman's hand through a porthole and never saw the rest of it.
Now, you also met, I guess, Kennedy, and you mentioned Nixon and Johnson, but of all of the presidents that you interacted with, who stood out in your mind as being memorable? Let's put it that way.
Well, I guess it would be Nixon. The first time I met him, I was a member of the White House Press Corps, and I was covering a magazine called Public Utilities Fortnightly, which the president and his cabinet read, and he was signing some bill or other concerning the Environmental Protection Agency, And now, I didn't have a tag to go into the Oval Office. I did to get into the press room. So I snuck in through a narrow corridor where all the rest of the press correspondents were going in. And I did a foolish thing. Instead of hanging back with the rest, I marched straight up to Nixon's desk in the Oval Office. And so I heard this gasp behind me. I think Sarah McClendon had grabbed my arm and was trying to pull me back. For some reason, I just wanted to go up to the front of the Oval Office desk. I did, and I looked over the side, and I saw a gentleman standing there. He was probably a Secret Service agent, putting his hand inside his coat. I said, "Oh my God, is he ready to shoot me?" You know.
Oh boy.
The president looked up at me, smiled, lowered his hand toward the agent, and as if to say, "It's okay."
Oh.
And he looked up at me and he says, "Blue skies, blue water. That's our motto for this year." So I was sweating a little bit.
Yes.
But,
I guess so.
but that was it. And then the second time, I stayed in the back with the rest of the correspondents and behaved myself.
Okay. Now, what about JFK? What kind of interactions did you have with him?
Very little, actually. Hale Boggs, a congressman from Louisiana, the first chapter of my book is devoted to his family. We got to be very good friends with Hale and Lindy Boggs, and congressman from Louisiana. And he and the governor of Maryland, I think it was Millard Talls at the time, maybe, wanted to ask my father if he would run for Congress on the Democratic ticket to help bolster the Democratic ticket during Kennedy's run for office in 1960. So during that summer, both John and Robert Kennedy came down to meet my father and ask him to run for office. And really all I did was I just shook hands with him and for a few minutes, and then he and my father and the rest went off. I think it was on board Governor Talls' boat, and discussed it. And when they asked my father if he wanted to run for Congress, he said no. Because he thought most politicians were dishonest.
Oh.
And if you could have seen several famous jaws drop.
I guess so.
They never asked him to run for dog catcher after that. They didn't know was that my father was a lifelong registered Democrat who'd voted the straight Republican ticket.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk about as general manager at the Beverly Hot Springs in L.A. You mentioned that you interacted with a lot of people. One is my favorite actor, and that's Tom Hanks, who I shouldn't ask you about him because it's probably going to dispel everything I think about him. But he comes across as a very nice person. I don't know if he really is in real life.
Yes, he was. I had a few minutes with him. He and his wife, Rita Wilson, were having green tea at the Beverly Hot Springs. It's a Korean place. It's the only natural hot springs in the city of Los Angeles. And I was general manager there for a while. And I sat down and talked with him, and he told me about his interactions with people like Spencer Tracy, he said, who taught him something about acting, and he said that I think he said that it was some of the best advice he ever got was that from Spencer Tracy was learn your lines and don't bump into the furniture. So it was very
good advice.
And he said if you follow those two particular principles, you probably get along fine. You know. but to know your lines, that was very important.
Yeah. Yeah, you
So
would
many
think.
actors have gone down the drain because they just couldn't learn their lines.
Ah, I see. Well,
Yeah.
who were some of the other celebrities that you interacted with who were memorable?
Well, the ones that I had the most interaction with was the main stars of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Hmm.
Patrick Stewart and LeVar Burton and Jonathan
Yes.
Frakes and Brent Spiner, all were almost daily visitors at the spa. And I became particularly friendly with LeVar Burton.
Mm-hmm.
And LeVar and I had a lot in common. We were very interested in spiritual things and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would discuss that a lot. And I was also the first person to inform the Star Trek crew that Gene Roddenberry had died, and this was in 1991. And so I got a frantic call from Paramount Studios, and they said that they wanted the crew, Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, and LeVar Burton, to hurry back to the studio. And I asked them why, and they said because Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, had just died, and they required their presence back at the studio. So I informed them of that.
Wow.
And also I met Oliver Stone there as well. He had just done his film JFK about the assassination of Kennedy. Can you still hear me there?
Yes. Well, you're coming
Right.
along. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, something went off. I'm not sure what it was.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. And then Daryl Hannah.
Okay.
I met her there. She had done the film Clan of the Clan of the Cave Bear, I think it was.
Hmm.
And also Jodie Foster. She had just finished her film. Oh gosh, I forget the name of it now. But a film where she had been sexually assaulted at this whaling town in New England. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress.
Hmm.
And then again, after she had won her second Academy Award for starring with Anthony Hopkins.
Yes. Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Wow.
And also, I was trying to think of his name now. My 81-year-old memory is kind of escaping me right
Yeah,
now.
you're doing great. So, of all of these individuals that you met in L.A., who sticks out in your mind?
I guess LeVar Burton.
Okay.
One I really got friendly with there, doing his frequent visits. But he was a very interesting person because we had a lot in common, not just his starring role in
Star Wars.
yeah, right.
Okay.
And also. Yeah, I was just looking over some of my notes here.
Well, we
I
are.
also met the lovely Leslie Ann Warren there, and she came in what I call her Apple Annie outfit. She was working with Mel Brooks on the streets of L.A. in a film called Life Stinks. It's a film very few people know about, and it was Mel Brooks' least successful film. But she came in on her Apple Annie outfit, and we would play a little game with each other. She came in different outfits and trying to figure out who I was. And she says, and I said, well, Leslie, I would know you anywhere. And so we had a little back and forth there. And also Frank Langella discussed his film role in Dracula at the time, and he did a very good job in that. And Jodie Foster talked about her Oscar-winning roles in The Accused, and
Wow.
which she made in 1998, and The Silence of the Lambs in 1991.
Well, you've had
a lot of these were short.
Sounds like
interaction.
Yes, certainly. Well, we are actually out of time. It's been 30 minutes. 30 minutes goes very quickly. Gordon, fascinating show. I really want to thank you for sharing your perspectives. I encourage the listeners to check out Connections by Gordon Lohr, about growing up in the Solomons, about his experience working with and interacting with many of these celebrities. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show, Mr. Lohr.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. It's been a pleasure for me.
Thank you. I also want to thank you, the listeners, for tuning in, and I hope you'll join me next week for another edition of Southern Maryland Perspectives. Until that time, I'm Brad Gottfried, President Emeritus of the College of Southern Maryland.